Hey everybody, it is Eric, it is Neil, and we are back from South Carolina and the Lemons Block Party race at Carolina Motorsports Park, where we had a block party and a race in the Carolinas. For as long as we've been doing Lemons, teams have always kind of schemed on this idea of swapping in a much more powerful engine overnight during a race weekend after fooling the judges. The implication has always been that the easy way to do this was to show up with some kind of crappy American V8 like a Chevy 307 and swap in a 383 stroker to dominate. Well, one team finally did it, and it was exactly what we all expected. That's right, it was a
Pontiac
Kia
Firebird.
Sophia.
Wait, what?
Now, after blowing up what could reasonably be considered the last Kia Sophia engine in South Carolina, Mock Grass swapped in a Honda K24 overnight in the paddock on Saturday. This was something they had planned on. They'd taken a bunch of measurements, and they discovered that basically the Kia Sophia underneath the hood was the same as an EG Honda Civic. They got a bunch of EG Honda Civic K-swap parts, and as team captain Kyle pointed out, we used a lot of Kia parts.
Kia.
What they maybe did not calculate was the implication of dropping 65 more horsepower into a car overnight without making any other changes. In the 2-hour morning session of Sunday morning, they racked up 4 black flags. Pretty sure that's also a Lemons first. They ended up doing the sexy car wash penalty. And on top of that, they started the weekend with a different theme, which was the Jort Storm theme that they had at the Friday night parade and block party.
That's right, this was the annual race at CMP where a bunch of weirdos drive their crappy race cars into downtown Camden for a combination block party and BS inspection. It's always an amazing time, and the city of Camden loves us. They were especially enamored with a few cars, though that doesn't maybe include the car that leaked a couple of quarts of oil in downtown Camden.
We'll start with Swamp Donkey Racing, which was some kind of lumberjacky lawnmower theme, but the crucial part, they had a blender making margaritas that was powered by a weed eater.
Apex Therapy Racing had a brand new car. They usually race a Jetta, but this race they brought a Blazer, a Cheech and Chong themed Blazer. Blazer. Get it?
Always popular is the Toyota Yaris of Gerald Gareth Gary Wilson Jr. Racing. Gary Wilson is, of course, SpongeBob SquarePants' pet snail.
Blue Steel had their Ford Mustang, and they were themed as pirates with a chest full of Blue Moon for some reason.
And of course, no race at CMP is complete without the Eagle Summit wagon of Dumb Selection Motorsports, that's DSM, better known as the Mini Van Halen.
At this race, we had some newcomers to rival the Mini Van Halen, a hair metal themed Mustang from Twisted Focus. They came through tech inspection earlier in the day doing the bit and then brought it with them all the way to downtown, which was great. Their car, by the way, was not remotely a Lemons car, but a SCCA race car built by Buddy Miles, who, of course, as we all know, played drums for Jimi Hendrix.
Whoa, that's insane.
Right? Oh, wait, that's Buddy Hendrix. He was the dude who built stuff on Horsepower TV. It was actually Buddy Hendrix's daughter Kimberly who built this car. Anyway, these guys bought the car from Hendrix, took a bunch of penalty laps, and got a bunch of black flags. At least they knew how to get the little things right.
There was an abnormal amount of mechanical carnage at this race, including 7 cars towed in at the end of the Saturday. Pretty sure that's a first. We'll run down a few of those. Let's start with Lemons Arcade and their Mazda RX-7. These are rookies. They showed up with an LS-swapped RX-7 and a driver roster with somewhere between 10 and 400 people. They managed to bend the shift linkage. They overheated the engine constantly and turned about 9 laps. Still had an amazing time and made a victory lap on their trailer Saturday afternoon after the car was dead.
Dad Bods Racing had their Mitsubishi Eclipse. This car has been around Lemons for ages. For many years, they ran the base model engine that it had in common with the Mitsubishi Cordia and Tredia. Anyway, they got tired of that gutless engine and upgraded to the 4G63.
No shit.
It went 3 laps before the front main seal blew out and dumped oil all over the track. Dead.
First-timers Mark Poor Racing were struggling to get their 1.8T into the car. You know, I've heard that's these modern small-block Chevy. They managed to turn a few laps before torching the head gasket. Done for the weekend.
Orange Lemons was back with their BMW E46. We saw this now Jurassic Park-themed BMW at Road Atlanta playing musical engines with some help from the Chester Cheaters guys. At this race, they managed to get the engine in and out entirely twice, including an engine swap in about 90 minutes before the Friday parade.
Were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
They never did quite figure out what was wrong, but check out this awesome Jurassic Park-themed diorama the team captain's daughter did for the parade. Hella sweet.
Another E46 Tortuga Racing brought this convertible and torched the clutch on test day. No big deal. How hard could a clutch be? As it turns out, the starter had never been off this engine, so they had to drill out the bolts to begin with, and that was just the beginning of the masochism that involves the transmission bolt, where you have to take the entire intake off, and a bunch of dumb luck just to get a socket on it. It took them about 24 hours to do the clutch and put everything back together. They came through tech Saturday afternoon looking like they had been living inside the bell housing for a few days. Things were going great until Sunday morning when something broke again and the car was stuck in third gear. They ran all day in third, said that they were actually faster with just one gear. There's probably a lesson in there, except there was one hang-up. They had to drive the car home on the road 100 miles in third gear. No big deal.
Skinny Coyote Racing was back. They have 3 basically identical Miatas that make it to about half the races annually. This was their 4th race since December, and as has happened at the 3 previous races, they lost a wheel. They're scheduled to race another one of their Miatas at Hallett the following week from this race. Are they going to make it 5 for 5?
The 4 Horsemen were back with their Ford F-250 after a debut at Road Atlanta. At that race, they burned through so many brakes. They upgraded this time to beefier Mustang stuff. They took all those torched brakes and made a can't stop, won't stop trophy for the team with the worst brakes of the weekend, which luckily was not them, even though they had their own brake misadventures. We'll talk about that trophy winner in just a minute.
We always enjoy seeing the Cheap Thrills XLR at the Lemons race and watching confused people ask 2 questions that we will answer yet again.
How is that $500?
These cars are literally totaled out for their headlight and taillight assemblies, which is literally $2,500 each. Each!
What happened to the LS engine?
The XLR was only sold with a North Star and an automatic transmission. The big achievement for this weekend for the XLR? They got the factory heads-up display to work. Priorities are in the right place.
On the subject of nice cars, we have seen Loose Lugnut Racing's very pretty Datsun 240Z several times, and it's always kind of stood out as being too pretty for Lemons. Well, Team Captain Lee fixed that by unfortunately having a massive shop fire. Thankfully no one was hurt, but the 240Z was the only equipment that survived the blaze, and it looks and smells much more like a lemon now.
And speaking of Datsuns, the Senior Citizens Club of America had their GM Ecotec swap Datsun B210, now with the enhancement of a Chrysler PT Cruiser steering rack. They were doing reasonably well until the brakes faded and they rear-ended a car on the track. Then the brakes totally failed, and when they went back on the track, they rear-ended a car on the pit lane. They got the can't stop, won't stop brake trophy from the F-250 guys.
We introduced a new judge, Judge Jen, who you may remember as the team captain of Viva La Volva, which is still still the only team to ever race a Subaru Brat in Lemons. Judge Jen brought her 10-year-old daughter, who was eager to implement a new penalty that, frankly, is amazing. She throws single slices of American cheese onto hot race cars. Turns out they stick really well and kind of make an unsettlingly firm polymer of food-like disgustingness on the hot hoods. Simple and gross. That's a great penalty.
We had a lot of great rookies and a lot of firsts at this race as well. Lemons Rally Master Jeff Straubs drove his first race in an old rental spec Mustang convertible with Ed White and Donnie Petrunik. He was jazzed, and we're pretty sure he's got a much more affluent car coming out later this year.
We also had the Fat and Furious, who brought an excellent Hyundai Tiburon painted like a Toyota Supra from old Japanese GT racing, except it was a Hoopra. They spent a lot of time building it. It looked absolutely beautiful. Had a bunch of overheating problems, but this is kind of exactly what Lemons cars should be. Well done, Fat and Furious.
Boondoggle Racing brought a Honda CRX. We hadn't seen these guys running in Lemons in years. Last we saw them, it was with the Corvette summer-themed Miata. They came back with a Honda CRX that has this weird 2-year-only Integra D16A1 twin-cam engine swap. It went flawlessly.
And we had a couple of student teams, which we always love seeing in Lemons. There were the Bomber Jackets, who are Georgia Tech engineering students. Now, Georgia Tech has a motorsports program. They build all kinds of crazy stuff for the GRM Challenge, including a Subaru-swapped mid-engine Honda Insight. As such, we were expecting them to bring something amazing, and they had an M3 swapped 318 Ti they bought from another series. They were still learning how to drive stick during the race, got a few black flags, but kind of finished.
The Myers Park High School team was back with their CRX this year. Their driving was not great. We gave them the loose change penalty, where they had to find a penny, nickel, dime, and quarter from 1988, the year of their car.
You need a nickel still.
Oh my God. Bye.
We understand quarters sometimes look like nickels.
Here are your class winners. Leho Fook Racing, by the way, last one in 2009. Also first one in 2009. Second one's hard to get. In Class B, Smoky Unit has a Golf with a
Turbo Diesel.
Once again, they had a huge lead on Sunday, and we were just kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. In this case, it was the accessory belt that checked out 90 minutes from the end. They ran that last hour and a half without a water pump, without overheating somehow. And in addition, it stopped making boost earlier than that, but limped home without a turbo.
Diesel.
Class C went to B Team. This is a base model Beetle, non-turbo, just kind of ran all weekend, almost always in the top 10. It's a great send-off for one of their teammates who's moving to Copenhagen.
Heroic fix for this race was this great team of rookies who brought this Honda Accord literally out of the woods. They slapped the world's cheapest lowering kit on it, and they brought it to Lemons. One team member works with Kyle Petty, so they sent pictures of the car, and Kyle took a look at the car and said, "It looked awesome. Great start for a weekend." Well, they were really enthused to be at the race until they blew up the engine on Saturday afternoon. They were about to pack up and came to talk to the judges. Eric said, "Well, you could always do an engine swap." The captain said, "We've never done that before." And then Eric suggested that it was a perfect time to learn. And they said, "Yeah, okay." So they had a different engine at the shop and they went to go get it. Unfortunately, it turned out they had killed the F22A in the car, and the replacement was from the next year, F22B. How hard could that be? They ended up putting the F22B head onto the F22A bottom end to try to make everything work, which they managed to do eventually. But what really made it heroic wasn't the fact that it was their first race and their first engine swap, which they pulled off. It was that they worked on it until 4 a.m. with the help of at least a half dozen other teams. Chester Cheaters, Boondoggle Racing, Old Dudes, Crossroads Racing, and Mockgrass, who loaned them help, expertise, tools, and everything else. We love the level of camaraderie. Heroic fix for everyone involved.
I Got Screwed went to the Adrenaline Chunkies. Now, we'd seen these guys several times with their Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles themed NA Miata. They blew up the 1.6 engine in that the last time, and they used that opportunity to make a couple of little upgrades, namely swapping in a Hayabusa sport bike engine. It showed up pretty well untested. Only the team captain had driven it around the block a few times, but the car was street registered, so he decided to let his teammates get a little bit of seat time by just taking it out onto the public roads and letting them feel what it was like to drive. We saw it shortly thereafter going about 2.5 miles an hour down the road in front of the track. It turns out the newfound power had ripped the differential right off its mounts. However, it was still drivable enough that they took it to the parade, and then they hung around all weekend in costume. So if you're going to blow all your stuff up, hang out and have a good time.
There were some common themes this weekend. We had 5 maroon Fords,
Maroon 5?
4 Mustangs, and a Crown Vic.
We also had 4 black Mercedes, and we decided that we would give out a trophy to the best of the black Mercedes since they were all pretty good. We'll start with the Benzoil high mileage Mercedes 190E. It's actually run by Kim Harmon's brother Craig and his friends. It has 250,000 miles in an automatic and a pretty good theme.
And the Repo Men were rookies with a CLS 550. This car was repossessed from 2 different owners and crashed 2 different times over the course of its life. This was a $70,000 car in 2007, and to call it severely depreciated might be an understatement.
Oh, how the mighty have fallen.
And then there was Looking Grim Racing, which we've seen a couple times. This was the smart bet for doing the best. The gas-powered V6 automatic W210. This thing would not run for the life of them this weekend. Went directly into limp mode and finished last of the Mercedes.
The actual best black Mercedes was the 1997 E300 diesel of the rookie team Move Over Motorsports. This car belonged to the team captain's mom for a long time, and when she decided to upgrade to something modern, they figured it should have some kind of weird final chapter to its life. This team, they're all NASCAR fans who go to races and ran across some people who told them about lemons. The light bulb went off, and they showed up with their platform-roof school buses that go to NASCAR races. When we say E300 diesel, we do not mean
Turbo Diesel.
this one is the basic OM606 with no turbo.
Diesel.
That means it's about the same power as a 1997 Pontiac Sunfire with the curb weight of a 1997 F-150. Not only the slowest black Mercedes, it was the slowest car of the weekend by 7 seconds. And it still beat all of the better Mercedes and looked amazing doing it. Because of their crossover roots with NASCAR, we called this award the Diesel for Dale Trophy.
Judge's choice went to the Nissan Pulsar of Tooth Hurdy. Now, first of all, the Nissan Pulsar is one of the weirdest, most forgettable cars ever sold in the US. These were sold with a sport back, which made them a kind of hatchback. Anyway, this is a team of Lemons Rally veterans who also happen to be circle track racers, and 2 of those team members did a rally dressed as chickens in a Subaru Brat. Now, obviously they have an affinity for weird stuff, so they did a Tooth Hurdy dental theme with the car and the number Tooth Hurdy. You get it. And that was great for the parade. What's maybe even better is that they didn't want to just deal with the extremely complex 1988 fuel injection system on the GA16 engine. So they slapped on a single barrel carburetor off an old Beetle, and they just turned the stock intake manifold into a carb intake manifold. Voila! Obscure car, good theme, weird mechanical preparation. That'll be a judge's choice.
On the subject of weird, first-timers POS showed up with this 1983 Celica that they had scored for the ideal price of, please remove this from my property like it's an invasive species. The 22RE engine fired right up. They didn't change much, they just put a roll cage in it and painted it brown. It even still had the stock door cards from 1983. The suspension was perfectly dynamic. Well, something like that. They were so pumped to be at the track, cheering for both themselves and everyone else they'd met through the weekend. They also blew out a seal on their differential and also burned up a clutch, but they somehow found that both of those items were in stock at parts stores within an hour. For a 42-year-old Japanese coupe, wild stuff. Awesome newcomers.
Halloween Meets Gasoline went to the Stalled Out Studs and their Mazda Miata. Now, you might know the team captain Vince from a few races in Colorado, where he most notably ran a Jaguar XJ with a Chevy small block V8 that he made into a V6 for a little while. One of the most amazing things to happen in the last couple years. This time around, he brought a new car and a new crew of drivers to CMP for the block party, and he let his daughter come up with the car's name, and they do a theme based on that. She named the car Sparkle Rose, and so they did their best to reverse engineer a theme from that. They had blow-up unicorn outfits, they had 3D printed unicorn horns, they had projected light show and a bubble machine. They also did their first wrap with like a metallic pink wrap in like 40 minutes before the parade. Looked pretty pro to us. Awesome team. Love the car, love the people, love that they involved their kiddo.
And that brings us to Index of Affluency, the highest prize in Lemons. You know, there are a handful of teams and cars in Lemons who routinely outkick the proverbial coverage of their cars' speeds. The bar racing team out of Florida has been doing that with this car that they got for $0. It had been a cast-off rallycross and project car from Grassroots Motorsports magazine, so they slapped a cage in it, and they went racing, and that's pretty much it. They've added some 3D printed aero over the years, but when team captain Britt says the money that he's spent has been on the roll cage, material for 3D printing, and the bitchin' seat cover, and every once in a while, shoes for the brakes, he means it. It's an automatic Corolla, and like it's done almost exclusively for the last 4 years in Lemons, it was the 69th fastest car of the weekend, and it beat 69 teams.
Nice.
That's how you do it, IOE.
And this is Lemons in a nutshell.
Every second you don't subscribe or watch one of these videos, another Vega is sent to the crusher. Won't you help us save Classic?